The views expressed on this program are not those of intellectualradio.com, its subsidiaries, or sponsors. Encouraging, educating, and empowering you into action. This is Warriors Talk with your host, Lady ReShell.
Hello, hello. Welcome to Warriors Talk with author and founder Lady ReShell, where we move away from awareness towards action. It is Health and Wellness Monday, and our topic for today is air pollution's impact on health and risk of cancer. We are live on Intellectual Radio. We just heard from the Drive at 5 with Roman. Keep it locked right here on Intellectual Radio and allow us to feed your brain. On the last episode of Warriors Talk, Rizal and I talked about the truth about 50-50 relationships. Head on over to YouTube, type in Intellectual Radio, and stay connected for any episodes you may have missed. The quote of the day is, "Health is like money. We never have a true idea of its value until we lose it." Here are your trending topics for today. Senior livings in the East and the Northeast regions of the United States are most likely to have Alzheimer's disease, according to new data shared at an association international conference. The report offers the first estimate of Alzheimer's disease prevalence in the U.S. at a county level. Research used data from thousands of individuals who participated in Chicago's Health and Aging Project to assess demographics, risk factors for Alzheimer's disease, including age, gender, and race. And they mapped out this against different counties in the US. The demographic estimates suggest that Alzheimer's disease rates are the highest in Miami-Dade County, Baltimore, and the Bronx, where there was 1 in 6 seniors living with the disease. In Maryland, they had the highest prevalence at the state level, and also in New York and Mississippi. Experts say the findings may be useful to help the public's leaders and organizations better support people who are living with the disease. That is your trending topic for today. We are so grateful for our sponsor. We have Emmanuel Church of God in Christ with Pastor Michael Richardson, who has a special message for us.
Greetings, I am Pastor Michael Richardson.
And I am First Lady Anastasia Richardson from the Emmanuel Church of God in Christ. We're located at 3058 West Van Buren in Chicago, Illinois. We are building upon a solid foundation.
And we're inviting you to join us every Sunday morning on Facebook Live at Emmanuel Kojic at 10:15 Central Standard Time. And you can also view our videos on our YouTube channel at Emmanuel Kojic-MR. Once again, this is Pastor Michael Richardson
and First Lady Anastasia Richardson, and we're from the Emmanuel Church of God in Christ. We are building upon a solid foundation.
Joining me today is none other than our healthy solution expert. She has over 20 years experience as a family physician, and she is impacting lives every single day. Hello, Doc Michelle. How are you?
Hello. Thank you for having me. Excuse me. Thank you for having me. Good to see you again. And I think we're going to discuss a great topic today.
Yes, I'm excited about the topic. If you are tuned in on any form of social media, like the show, share the show, invite someone in on the show that you feel may benefit from this valuable information. Our topic is pollution, impact on health and risk of cancer. Now, Dr. Michelle, I think it was last week or maybe 2 weeks ago, we were all walking around in this thick cloud of something. We had no idea. We know that it was as a result of some residue coming over. They said from Canada, from wildfires from Canada. But, just to walk out and see that, you had no idea what it was. It was kind of scary.
Yeah, I remember walking outside to walk my dog, and I could smell the burning right in the air. And even from walking him for 10, 20 minutes, I felt my throat was a little scratchy, itchy. I sort of felt like bronchitic all day. like a coughing. So that episode and since then has people thinking more about the pollutants, the air pollutants. But good that we're talking about it now, but we know that there's always air pollution around. It's just that now that we're seeing it with the haze in the air, that we're more concerned. But we live with air pollutants all the time related to just being in an urban community, cars driving, factories making things that are putting smoke into the air, the things we use in our homes, every day. So I'm glad we have an opportunity to talk about it and to understand like where we're getting it and what we can do to prevent problems.
Yes, I know my daughter, before she goes outside, she's checking the what is it, the air quality
Air
index.
quality index.
Yes, to
Yeah.
try to figure out, is the air healthy enough for us to be outside? And, for her to be looking at that, that's kind of serious to think about. She's thinking about, okay, is my health going to be affected if I go outside today? So maybe, I should stay in because of what this air quality index is saying, which I never knew about the air quality index. We know to check the weather, but that's about it. But it's come to this point to where we have to look at the air quality index and then make a decision like, is it really necessary for me to go out today? Can I put off what I need to do until another day when the air quality index is good?
Yes, good point. And I'll tell you, all your weather apps, in addition to giving you the weather, they give you the AQI, the air quality index. So it is something that you can check. If it's above 150, it's considered to be unhealthy. And I think we were up to a couple of weeks ago over 200, and I think yesterday or the day before it was about 150, so in that unhealthy range. And you're absolutely right that it's unfortunate we're thinking about it now, we're more aware of it. That's the fortunate part, but we are dealing with it because we have so much more. There's so many more cars on the road. There's so many more factories producing all the things that we use on a daily basis. And, for your daughter to be thinking about it at her age, I think that's good. It's good because you need to be aware of that.
Yes, so they're saying that air pollution is the silent killer. It says air pollution kills thousands of people every day, but due to the pollution being a silent killer, most of us don't really grasp the effects of how it, play like a damaging part on our health.
Yeah, because like I said, you don't always see the pollution, right? But it's always around us, even outside and indoor. Just a little aside, we don't think about our indoor air as much. Indoor air tends to be about 30% healthier than the outside air. But even so, because we shut our windows year round, right? Keep the cool air in, the hot air out. I mean, we do that year round, that we never really circulate good air in our homes. We'll talk about, making sure that you have filters in your home and how you can clean the air inside your home. But the exposure to air pollution causes damage to our cells over time. It's what we call oxidizes it. So it affects the oxygen and how it's working in your body. And when that happens, you increase your risk of inflammation and cancer, and even things like you mentioned, dementia. I was looking as I was doing some research for our topic, and I just want to read this, that Alzheimer's disease and related dementias are a public health challenge for the aging population. And the University of Washington has identified a link between air pollution and dementias. And showing that ambient air, those fine particles can increase the risk of dementia. And so we have to think about that too. We think about air pollution and we inhale it. Your image for the show showed inhaling that gas, and we think that it's just our lungs, right? But it's more than that. We actually find that most of the diseases and problems that are caused by air pollution are not necessarily lung, it's heart attacks, it's strokes, it's the inflammation and what it does to your blood vessels when you inhale those tiny particles, and then they cross from your lungs into your bloodstream, and what they do to your blood vessels.
Yeah, I was thinking about like water. When we get ready to drink some water, we look at it. If it's cloudy, if it looks kind of mercury, we're not gonna drink it. We're gonna be like, no, I'm gonna wait, I'm gonna pass, or go get something else to drink. But when it comes to air, we don't have a choice to say, take a deep breath and say, oh, well, I'm not gonna breathe this air today because it doesn't smell
Right.
clean. Like we don't have a
Right.
choice because our life depends on it.
Yes, and that's why we have to do the other things that we can do to protect ourselves. Sometimes 2 weeks ago when I went outside, I put a mask back on, right? So that at least reduces that from getting into your lungs. And then we talk about the things that we eat, that are good for us, plant-based diet and such. And Nicole put in the chat that yes, we inhale bad pollution, but also in foods, because there's pesticides on how our foods are grown now, the things that they put in the food. So we have to be aware of that. I always talk about eating organic when you can, which unfortunately we know organic is more expensive, right? But just a tidbit as far as the pesticides on foods, I always say if you're going to have to choose an organic food, if you eat the skin of that food, then you want to choose organic when you can, right? So think about strawberries, think about apples. You don't necessarily need organic bananas because you peel the skin off, it's a little bit of a protective barrier. But those fruits and vegetables that you eat, especially the vegetables, because we pretty much eat the skin, lettuce and spinach and all that. And you want to choose organic when you can, but it's not always an option. You can also use those veggie sprays and washes to wash off. I always say wash your vegetables and your fruits before you eat them too. But
Dr.
the
Michelle,
food
do
is a
you
problem too.
think, I'm sorry, do you think the marketplace, how they have the marketplace fruit, do you think that's healthier than the fruit that we get at the supermarket?
So you're talking about like your your Saturday morning markets and such. It depends, right? How is the farmer doing that? And for the most part, most farmers are using pesticides because they kind of need to keep the bugs and things off of the food, to keep it to make them look good, right? For one thing, and to make sure that their harvest grows. But you've got to, it's so hard, ReShell, because you really got to do your research, right? We're not asking that farmer, well, how did you grow these peaches and blueberries that you have here, right? And sometimes they'll tell you that they don't use pesticides and how they grow it. But even in those instances, always wash it, always, clean those fruits and vegetables before you eat it, even from the farmer's market. Yeah.
Yeah. So Kendra had a question about how do you know that it's really organic?
Yeah, we don't, right? Because they're starting to do some regulations of what's organic, what's just free of pesticides or such, but there's not a lot of regulation of that. But that's getting better. So again, we are the USDA who they do a lot of the regulation of our food. There are certain things that has to be passed before a farmer or a company could say it's organic. So we hope that that is true, and the USDA is protecting us, of course, right? So that what we see out on the shelf is what it is.
Exactly. I saw this thing. It said, "What does this code mean?" And it tells you when you go to the grocery store, if you are trying to see if it's organic or not, it'll have a 5-digit code, and the code would start with a 9.
Yes.
Right.
And if
So
it's not organic, it's a 4-digit code. I think it ends with a 4 or something
yeah.
of that nature.
Mhm.
Or yeah. Yep.
So I
So
mean,
that's one way to tell.
there's one way, but then you're still really not sure. But that's just one way to look at it.
Yeah.
When you're
And
in the
then a
store.
lot of people don't, because because the organic doesn't have all the pesticides and things, it can go bad quicker. And so people don't usually want to buy it, and it's more costly. It's a double-edged sword, but whenever you can, especially for young people, kids whose immune systems aren't even fully developed and things like that, I'm a advocate of using organic whenever you can.
Yes. Can you say, here's the thing, the farmers are trying to make a sale just like the people at the store, and oftentimes they're going to stress the truth.
Yeah, and that's why we have to do our part, right? We can do the things that we can to limit the bad effect that it might have on your system, right? So that is when you eat fruits and vegetables and what we call the plant-based diet, those things have antioxidants, right? You hear about the colors in your fruits and things have antioxidants because it helps protect your cells from the damage caused by pollution, right? So if you eat the right foods, and I was just reading too that they think that eating fish, healthy fish oil, omega-3, can help protect you from developing dementia in older people. And so that's what we always go back to. What are we eating? Are we putting the right things in our bodies to protect ourselves? Wearing a mask when you can. I remember a patient clearly who never smoked and wondered why he developed severe COPD. Well, from history, turns out that he was a mechanic, right? And he didn't use a mask. He was in his 60s who used masks, right? And so he developed severe COPD and, eventually passed away. But when I see mechanics, if you're listening and you know someone in that field where they may be exposed to chemicals from cars, from the car wash, from if they're a painter, right? The paint removers, the paints, all those things with the chemicals in it, they have to protect themselves
A
with a good
hairstylist
mask.
with the bleach.
Hairstylists and the aerosols, right? When you walk into the salon, you smell it. And they're in that salon 8 hours a day, 5-6 days a week, and no one's wearing a mask. And it's those tiny particles from the aerosol, from the wildfires that go deep into your lungs, cross from your lungs to your bloodstream, and increases your risk of cancer, heart disease, dementia, all those fumes all day long. We should all be, if we're in that situation, we need a mask.
Yeah, I went with a group of ladies to Paris and Italy, and it was a group of Asian people. Every time we saw the Asian people, they had on masks. And this was before COVID, and I'm just like, why do they have on a mask? They all wore a mask, and I was just like, wow. And come to think of it, back then, I'm like, we all should have had on one back then because COVID was like right around the corner. But and I think every time you see them, mostly they always have on a mask.
And in Asia, in Japan, and those areas that are so built up, right? We know Japan, Tokyo, Hong Kong, built up with lots of buildings and factories and all of that. And so they know that that's a hazard. So for the most part, they are wearing masks where we don't really talk about it, right? We're starting to more and more, but I think that and this show is so timely because we're thinking about it more, but it's everywhere. It's the people who are working in the salons, and it's not one thing, right? It's that plus your genetics, and you put all the things together, that's what increases your risk.
I was looking at statistics, and it said that air pollution takes at least 2 years off your lifespan.
Mm-hmm. Yes, it's kind of like like smoking, right? We smoking and we don't think about it till later, but and why is the life expectancy decreasing as time goes on? Because all of these things that we're exposing ourselves to. and then the children, right? We haven't even talked about the kids. When you live in urban areas, low income areas, where not only are we urban and we've got lots of cars and factories, but then they may live in areas where there's not good ventilation for their homes. There's the products they're using to clean their homes are maybe cheaper, which are more chemicals, and you put all that on top of it, and then we wonder why there's more asthma and bronchitis, because it all goes together.
So you mentioned children, they're one of the people that have they're vulnerable when it comes to the air pollution. And so these are some of the people who are vulnerable: people with lung disease, people who have asthma, bronchitis, emphysema. It says chronic obstructive pulmonary disease, infants and young children. And you mentioned people who work outdoors, people over the age of 65, people who have cardiovascular disease. You mentioned people in poverty who don't have access to health care. People who smoke, people who inhale secondhand smoke, people who have an occupation, we mentioned this, they work in those high exposure areas, and people who spend a lot of time near the busy roadways.
Yeah, and does that not include everyone, right? Does it not include everyone? When I go to get my car washed and I see these young people washing my car, and I'm like, put on a mask, please, right? Because they're around all of that. The cars are going by, and then they're spraying the chemical, the soap to help clean our cars, and none of them have on masks, and they're all day. So if you know a young person who's working at the car wash, they should have on a mask too. I feel like I should go and talk to all of them, but I don't. So
just hand a mask out the window.
Right.
Maybe put on a mask. They said when you're sitting in traffic, if it's in stop and go traffic to where you're not really moving and all of the fumes are just, coming through the exhaust, they said you should put on your air conditioner and have the air recycle inside of the car until you get out of traffic.
Yes. It's important to circulate the air, not only in your car, good point, but in our homes too, right? I was speaking earlier about the internal or in-home air. And if you don't have an air purifier, you should get one. If you're able to, at least have the HEPA filters in your filters if you can. Those should be changed like every 3 months. And I know people put those filters in and they never think about it again, right? But the things that we do in our homes, in those enclosed areas, like your car, make sure you turn that on so you can at least circulate that air. Like in our homes, we've got to clean the air from the things we spray in our homes, the chemicals, cooking, and the smoke and fumes that brings about that we don't think about.
So you have the two types of pollution. We're talking about the man-made pollution when it comes to the car, the natural pollution. We talked about the wildfires. They talked about forest fires. Even they said something about ashes, soot with this salty spray. Yes. Those are all natural. So transportation, electricity, and all the household stuff is all man-made. And you think about what is it that we could do to really minimize, our risks of, getting cancer from this or other chronic diseases that are associated with air pollution. Are our hands really tied because there's really nothing we can do?
Yeah, well, part of it is what is happening now is we're becoming more aware. So, right, we've got more electric cars, which put out more, less pollutants. We're talking more about over the years, now I only use green cleaning products in my home. And I've done that since my kids were babies. When you have kids, you think about these things. And so there are certain things, it's not mainstream, but I do recall that when I started using green cleaning products in my home 20 years ago, that I couldn't really get that on the store shelf. I had to order it online.
It was more expensive too?
and it was more expensive. But now you can get that on the counter, on the shelf, right? We need to see more of that than we do the regular stuff, but it's corporate. So some of that's not going to change, but the what we can do is educate ourselves and go and find those things that help to decrease your risk, right? So using green cleaning products, using makeup, and I know there's apps that actually will check the ingredients of your skincare products to see what may be bad in them, and doing those type of things. But it does take education. There's some things in the in the air because we drive cars that we just can't really prevent. More people hopefully will, and it'll become easier to have electric cars, and depend less on those type of things. But it's part of the developed world, right? It's part of that. So we're trying to do what we can. So we have to do individually what we can too, by because we know it's out there. It's really your air filters, your air purifiers, your diet, masks. I mean, these are the things we have control over.
Wow. So I was reading, it was saying, what is the state of the air pollution today? And it says 36% of Americans, which is nearly 120 million people, live in places where they have a failing grade of unhealthy levels of the ozone layer and particles from pollution.
Yeah, because most of us live in urban areas. They do studies of rural communities versus urban communities. Rural communities sometimes will do a little bit better than urban communities for sure. But rural communities have their things too, because most of the time that's where the farms are and the pesticides and things. But it is less than living in an urban community. And we're an urban world. US is an urban mostly, where the denser populations are urban.
You mentioned earlier about air pollution exposure is associated with the oxidative stress and inflammation in the human cells. And it says that in 2013, the World Health Organization classified air pollution as a human carcinogen.
Right. Yes. 10 years. Yes.
That's scary.
It can be, right? Sometimes I think I'll just stay inside where
Right.
I can control things, but we have to live our lives, right? And again, we live in this society where we have more, but we're also causing more problems by having more things. And so on a population global level, I mean, we're sort of behind, but we're trying to make changes now, by having these things we talked about: green products, environmentally safe products, trying not to depend so much on gas and those type of things. We may have, as they say, let the cow out the barn, and but we've got to do what we can. Yeah, but it is a carcinogen. We know that those little the ozone and the methane and the benzenes and all these chemicals, they can get into our airways. And so the only thing that we have control over is what we can do. And I always go back to, I'm a broken record, plant-based diet. What are we putting in? Trying to eat organic when you can, hydrate your cells, exercise reduces oxidative stress to our bodies. All these other things that we think about for just obesity or heart disease, they do all of that.
So in 1970, they actually set the standard for the air pollution. I don't know why it took so long for 1970. They put it in place. That's when they became concerned about the quality of the air. But at that point, their understanding was it was only a respiratory threat at that time.
Yeah, we thought it was mostly respiratory, and because of course you inhale it, and we know that is a part, right? We know that the increased exposure leads to more bronchitis, more asthma, more emphysema and COPD. But over the last, from 70 to 50 years, we've learned that it's more than that. There's studies that link it to ADHD. We already talked about dementia and cardiovascular disease and autoimmune things, right? Because if you think about it, the prevalence of a lot of these diseases are more and more. And I think it's not just pollution, but it's all the other thing. It's your genetics, it's what we eat, it's what we're exposed to, that all those things together turn on the gene for that disease. And here we are, right? We think pollution not only increases your risk of lung cancer, but also breast cancer. I think I read pancreatic and GI cancers, right? Because again, it goes in through your lungs, but it also, passes the barrier into your bloodstream. Our skin is the largest organ, and so if you're exposed to things that land on your skin, if you're in, the car wash or the mechanic or whatever, and you're in that all the time, it's also getting absorbed through your skin, and that leads to other things.
Wow. Definitely something to think about and be more conscious as you are just going about your day to day, and taking time to maybe research and do our homework to research cleaner products that we can use, and then teach your children, so as they're growing, they can incorporate it into their lives too. It takes you being intentional about it. It's not just going to happen, and then it's not an overnight process. So don't beat yourself up if you're not, if you feel like, oh, I'm not living a cleaner, greener life. Like that stuff takes time. I think about people like not eating meat anymore and deciding to become like vegan or whatever. Like stuff like that takes time, and you just have to make a conscious effort to do it daily.
Yes, you made a good point. You have to be intentional about it, right? And even making small changes. For me, you talk about people who go vegetarian or vegan. It's still hard for me, right? But I will tell you, I don't eat a lot of red meat. It's very rare, but I still eat meat. I eat chicken and I eat, other things. But you have to be intentional about it and make little changes, and it will, it'll become a habit, right? It doesn't happen overnight. It takes every month after month for it to become a habit. For me, I stopped drinking, a lot of soda, but that didn't happen right away. But I wanted to decrease my sugar intake, which is another another show we could do about inflammation and what that does to your body. But it's possible, right? Just be intentional about it and make some changes, and don't beat yourself up because you're eating what you're eating or you're using whatever you're using, right? That we haven't had enough education about the other options that are available to you. And of course, the other options tend to be a little bit more costly. So that's a barrier for many people, and the people who need it most in the urban, underserved areas, right? They can't afford that.
So true, so true. I want to take a quick break just so I can recognize one of my sponsors, who is Gloria Dotson with Mary Kay. She's catering to all of your beauty needs from head to toe. You can head over to marykay.com/GDTOSON. Make sure that you tell her that Warriors Talk sent you. We are live on Intellectual Radio. I'm talking to Doc Michelle, and we're talking about air pollution's impact on health and risk of cancer. And we found out that, yes, air pollution does contribute to your risk of cancer. Lung cancer, breast cancer, pancreatic cancer. She mentioned some GI cancers. So be conscious when you go outside. If you know the air pollution is unhealthy. We mentioned going to the air quality index, checking it just like you check the weather. And if it is heavy, wear a mask. If you're in your house, have an air purifier. Circulate that air throughout your house. There's so many things that we can do at home before we even hit outside into the air. So
yes, all great points, because you could think about it and be overwhelmed, right? When you think, oh, I have to breathe the air and I know it's not good for me. That can be a little bit overwhelming and anxiety provoking, right? But we combat that anxiety by thinking about what we can control. And you went through those things. And really it can affect, air pollution can affect every part of your body. And if you think about it that way, and not just for lungs, but other cancers, leukemia, lymphoma, it can weaken the bones. I was reading, cause osteoporosis. So we just have to be cognizant that we're living in times where, because of all the things we have and that we do, we are have increased exposure, and just be aware of that and be intentional on your changes and what you can do.
Do you feel, Dr. Michelle, that we're headed to a period, a season, an era to where we can have this thing under control when it comes to air pollution, even with all of the, like you said, the different options out there that we can choose?
Yeah, it will take time, but I'm cautiously optimistic that by spreading the word on our individual levels, and then what the larger population does. Like, I know the president had made some sort of a declaration that he wanted to have so many electric cars by 2035, I think it was, right? And he wants to have incentives for purchasing electric cars and all of that. Now, I think that that's great. And hopefully, as we move forward, we'll have more opportunities, different brands, different types, different costs for electric cars, so that electric cars become the norm. But again, we're fighting against gas companies, right? So it's difficult, but again, let's do our part. Let's do our part on an individual basis, and hopefully the population will follow.
You know what? When you mentioned we were fighting against gas companies, you know what popped into my head?
What's that?
Pharmaceutical companies.
Oh yeah, pharmaceutical companies. Yeah.
Because I feel like they're right up there with the gas companies. Like if we went electric, a lot of cars, that would be a lot of money that's lost.
Right. Well, I always have a battle with companies, insurance companies, that don't pay for prevention things for obesity, or where it's changing. I'll tell you, I've been a doctor for over 20 years, and in the beginning, we didn't think about medications to help obesity, right? But now we're understanding that obesity is the driver for all the medical problems we have. But you are right. If we cure all the medical problems, what happens to the pharmaceutical companies that are making the medications? I don't think they'll ever go out of business. But yeah, we have to deal with the prevention as well as the treatment.
I totally agree.
Yeah.
Dr. Michelle, let's get into some of these facts and myths as it relates to air pollution. So myth number 1, breathing polluted air makes you immune to it.
Absolutely not, right? Wouldn't that be great if the breathing it in made us immune to it? But no, it just makes it worse. It's kind of like smoking. People are smoking, they're not immune to the nicotine. It just damages their airways and their cells and blood vessels even more. So we've got to not breathe in the pollution as much as we can, and with all the ways we talked about.
Awesome. Number 2, only visible air polluted is real.
That's definitely a myth, right? We are seeing the pollution now with the haze in the air, but in our homes, we have pollutants and we don't see them, right? So it's everywhere, it's invisible. The particles that we're talking about, when you hear about that micron number, how big the particle is.
It was 2.5? 2.5? The main particle that so it was 2.5.
Yeah, 2.5 microns. And a hair is about 60 microns.
Wow. Oh, wow.
So so you're talking about something that you cannot see it,
right,
but it will go into your airways and cause problems. Yeah.
Wow.
So you can't see it.
That was a visual right there. Wow.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
It was. Kenya said that's why they can't tell me they don't have a cure for cancer. People donate millions and trillions of dollars for scientific aspects, and you're telling me we still don't have a cure.
Yeah, the cure for cancer. Yeah, we wish we could find it, or the scientists? That's a question, Nicole, I can't really answer, right? I hope that they would not keep a cure from the public if they had it, but yeah.
I could say, Dr. Michelle, I sit on the Department of Defense panel for research, for breast cancer research, and I sit with scientists, and I sit as a consumer because I had breast cancer. And so we go through applications for scientists who put together a cure, whatever they feel. It could be, it depends. It could be for triple negative breast cancer. It could be for HER2 positive breast cancer. And so they put their thing together. I'm trying to, the word for it, not their thing, but they put it together and they present it to us to read through it. And then we determine, as a consumer who's been through cancer, I'm coming from the side of, this would be harmful for someone who's going through it. This, all of these side effects, it may not even be worth it for someone to take this medicine. And then the scientist is sitting on that side saying, that won't work. Like, you putting A, B, C together and know that doesn't work. And then we determine if we're going to push it through. If we come to the conclusion that it could work with all of the particles that we've read, and we push it through. And I can say, because before I was like, what they doing with all this money? They ain't doing nothing with this money that they collecting. Now, granted, this money right here is not coming from donations, but it's the Department of Defense, so it's not coming from people donating. But I can see now how much it costs just for one proposal to get through for what they have to do. And all of the different applications that come through that's looking for a cure.
Right. The proposals, the clinical trials, before something can ever get to the public, it costs a lot of money. It really does. And if you think about how many cancers are out there, it's a daunting task. So kudos to you, and thank you, for that service in that way, because you're helping, others.
Yeah. I mean, sitting there, I was just like, wow, like this is a lot to actually see it, because, you hear about, oh, they're doing a run, they're doing a walk, and they're collecting this money. And you're like, what they doing with this money? So I get to see, even though they're not getting theirs from donations per se outside with people, but I get to see, okay, this money, one application is $300,000. You got to pay the scientists, you're doing an experiment. So I know that they are doing research. I know that they are looking, but like you said, it's over 200 and some cancers out here. So they're going to have to find a cure for every last one of them, not just, oh, we found a cure for cancer. It's a cure for cancers.
Right. I mean, and this is a different topic, but they've come a long way with a lot of cancers, especially like breast cancer and colon cancer, where they can target certain mutations in the genes and have different medications, right? Because every cancer is different and it has its own mutation and issues. So it's a daunting task, and thank goodness for scientists that continue to do that work, right?
Exactly. All right. Number 3, indoor air. And I think we talked about this. You hit this one though. Indoor air is always safer than outdoor.
Not necessarily. We know the indoor air can be a little bit cleaner than our outdoor air, but that's even changing because we keep the windows closed and we have our chemicals and everything in our homes that stay in our homes, right? So we talked about how do we help that, which is air purifiers and HEPA filters in your furnaces and such.
Yeah, make sure you change them, because sometimes people don't change. It'll be last year and they're turning it on and haven't even changed the filter. Like, change the filter. Like,
We've
take
got
the
to
time.
change the filters. It won't work if you've got a filter in there for 5 years.
Right. Change that filter. Number 4, air pollution is the lowest in the morning.
Oh, that's actually not true. they did some studies on that and shows that it actually is a little bit lower in the evenings and afternoons. And I haven't really done enough study research to understand why that is, but it's always bad, but tends to be a little bit better in the afternoon. So when we talk about, we think it was better, so go for an early morning walk, that may not be true.
That's true. Number 5, rain improves the air quality.
I think studies show that that is not true at all. Even heavy rain, we think, oh, that'll sort of wash things down and remove it, but there's so much, there's so much in the air that rain is negligible. It really doesn't make a difference. So if you're at risk, if you're concerned, wear a mask when you go outside, and then do the other things that we've talked about to decrease your risk.
Right. It says data show that rain has a relatively small impact on reducing air pollutants. All right. Number 6, planting trees help reduce air pollution.
Yeah, and that's a myth too, right? So the plants and things look beautiful and they're great for, the environment as far as the birds and the bees and all of those things, right? But negligible in really what it does for purifying your air. Better to get an air purifier that has shown to, I think it was 85%, improve your air quality versus having lots of plants in your home.
Wow.
And air purifiers can be costly, but I do know there are some not-for-profits that provide air purifiers and filters to certain, urban communities or high-risk communities. That would take some research. But if you're having trouble, finding an air purifier, and there's I think asthma foundations that sometimes if you contact them and you're in need, they may provide you with an air purifier or filters and things like that. So because they can be a little bit costly.
Right. And it says research showed that plants do little to reduce air pollution indoor as well. Dr. Michelle, once again, you have not disappointed us with your information, your gems that you drop. You keep educating us every single month. And just know that I do appreciate your wisdom.
Well, thank you. Thank you. I am thrilled to be here and offer the education because sometimes we're not getting this information anywhere else. And if you hear in the sound of my voice, spread the word.
Yes. And she's also available if you have an event and you want her to come and speak. She's available to speak. Dr. Michelle, how can they get in contact with you?
Yeah, so they can reach out to me, direct message on Facebook. I'm Doc Michelle or Dr. Michelle's Healthy Life Solutions, or they can reach out to you as well to reach me, but I am available as well.
Awesome. Kenya says, thank you, Dr. Michelle.
Thank you.
And before you go, Dr. Michelle, can you give us some words of wisdom, some final thoughts on air pollution?
Yeah, so as we talked about, air pollution and thinking about it can be overwhelming because we have to breathe the air where we live. But I want you to think about the things that you can do to lower your risk. First of all, if you work in a high risk occupation, if you work outdoors all day, if you're working in a mechanic or car wash or a hair salon even, understand that you may be at increased risk because of the chemicals that you're around, and decrease your risk by wearing a mask while you're at work. And then decrease your risk of indoor pollution by using an air purifier or filters. And then last but not least, we always talk about our healthy diet, that our plant-based diet that has lots of antioxidants that help to decrease the oxidation that happens from pollutants to your cells, right? So that's why we talk about this plant-based diet all the time, and understanding the benefits of that, and that air pollution not only affects your lungs, but it affects really every organ, every system, children, elderly. So do what you can to reduce your risk by doing the things that we talked about.
Thank you so much, Dr. Michelle. I appreciate you.
Oh, you are so welcome. I appreciate you as well. Thank you for having me on every month.
Thank you. Coming up next at 7 p.m. on Intellectual Radio is the People Show with Mark Wallace and Charles Thomas. So don't go anywhere. I will leave you with these words of wisdom. The health of your brain is much more about your actions than your age. Join me next Monday at 6 p.m. on Intellectual Radio. As always, thank you for tuning in to Warriors Talk with author and founder Lady ReShell, where we are changing lives one warrior at a time.
Thank you for listening to this week's edition of Warriors Talk with Lady ReShell. To find out more about Warriors Talk, follow at Warriors Talk, the number 1, on all social media outlets, and Warriors Talk with Lady ReShell on YouTube. Please join us next week and every Monday evening at 6 p.m. Central Standard Time on intellectualradio.com for Warriors Talk with Lady ReShell, where we encourage, educate, and empower you into action.